Hello, very good morning. You're watching Sky News Breakfast. Our headlines here today. The US raises a lone hand to veto a UN Security Council resolution which called for a ceasefire in Gaza, with the UK abstaining. Former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick claims that there are too many migrants to integrate into society in his first public comments since resigning. Unions come together for their first special conference in decades to sharpen their battle plan against a contentious new strike law. The EU reaches a landmark AI regulation deal, describing it as a world first in the way the technology can be governed. Audiences acting up. Sky News hears accounts of theatre workers being attacked in an increasingly rowdy West End. Now, in a moment, we'll be discussing the newspapers this morning with the Chief Executive of International Marketing Partners, Alison Stewart-Allen, and Bidisha Mamata, the author of Asylum in Exile, Hidden Voices in London. But first, let's take you through the front pages of the papers, and they are dominated by the twists and turns over the Rwanda policy. And the Times, first of all, writes that the government's legal advisors think there's only half a chance that the plan will work. The Telegraph focuses on former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick's remarks of the paper that integration is becoming impossible. The Eye says Conservative MPs from what it calls all wings of the fractured party are poised to rebel. The Guardian reports that the Home Office is being pushed to reveal the full cost of the Rwanda plan. And away from that issue, the FT covers snags in the Panama and Suez canals that it says will lead to Christmas supply chain problems. The Sun claims an exclusive, with Palace insiders saying that the King is refusing to be emotionally blackmailed by Prince Harry. The Mirror carries allegations that images of Nigel Farage have been doctored in an effort to help him win I'm a Celebrity. According to The Express, 5 million Britons plan to spend this Christmas abroad. And if that's the case, they're unlikely to be troubled by the UK's Santa shortage, which is reported on the front page of The Star, which I'm very happy to say that we are going to be discussing. Very good morning to you, Alison and Bidisha. Lovely to see you this morning. Before we get on to Santa, the crucial issue of Santa, we are going to start with the government's issues over its Rwanda policy. Alison, I think you're kicking us off because it's on a number of the front pages.
It certainly is, yes.
The Eye is talking about some of the divisions within the Tory party over these plans. So what are they suggesting might happen?
Well, a number of things. They're suggesting that the Group of Five, named after the mafia families in New York, there are 5 factions within the Conservative Party, and that they will coalesce and derail Mr. Sunak's legislation.
From left and right?
From left and right. So the challenge, if you are the Prime Minister, like any board of directors in a company, like a CEO in some ways, your challenge is to win over and to either neutralize so that these factions don't do as much damage as they're intending, but try to get them on side. That's a function of lots of conversations. There's no fast track to be able to get everyone on the same page. I do not envy somebody in this position having to try to get everybody aligned around this very contentious topic.
Well, that's right, especially when you've got some people saying this goes way too far, they're uncomfortable about the policy, and others say it doesn't go far enough. I mean, you couldn't get further apart than that.
This is exactly what happens when you have an unelected Prime Minister. It's exactly what Alison says. And
Except it was a policy that Boris Johnson promised, wasn't it?
Not only that, but it was a favourite of the Home Office. But what's really interesting politically is that the courts, the European Court of Human Rights, has said this is inhumane, but it's also just bizarre. I think there are lots of people at every point of the political spectrum who are thinking, hang on, what, you want to bus/plane asylum seekers to random country, Rwanda? It's costing a huge amount of money, and Sunak is under a lot of pressure right now to disclose how much it's costing.
And that's the Guardian's front page, isn't it?
The Guardian's front page, and the cost has escalated to £290 million. And anyone, not even a business lady like you or an economist, and I'm not either, anyone would say, hang on, isn't there so much more and better you could do with that vast amount of money?
Well, yes, Labour are saying that money should be spent on clearing the backlog or tackling smuggling gangs, and that's something the government says that they want to do as well. And as far as the money is concerned, you're right, 240 has already been spent, another 50 million due to be spent without anyone having travelled there yet, apart from a few Home Secretaries perhaps. But the government does say, well, we've got to have the system up and running, the infrastructure has to be in place so that it's ready to deal with these people, and there's an economic partnership that's part of the deal. It's also about, establishing the growth of Rwanda and its economic development as well.
Yes.
That rationale proves that there is currently no plan and no system in place. You're not supposed to do the financial deal, bank some of the profits. There are no profits from this. This is the UK paying out to sort this out, and then run around and say, yes, the reason it's so expensive is because it's so expensive, because we're trying to build it up out of nothing. It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
And take us on to the Daily Telegraph, because it was this policy that prompted the immigration minister, who's been the one working on it, Robert Jenrick, to resign this week, of course. And he has written for the Telegraph, and aside from his resignation letter, this is the first time we've heard from him. And he talks about why he went.
Well, it's sort of like pulling the trigger to try to get other things to happen. And basically in the paper, the Telegraph today, he's arguing that the voter, when the polls are opened, which is obviously sometime, probably first half of 2024, that the voter will definitely hammer the Conservative Party over this policy of Rwanda not going far enough. Again, back to the challenge that you have, as you would in a business, of a very outspoken dissenter. You're going to have to rein them in some way, or ignore them, which is going to be very difficult, because again, they risk undermining the brand. And let's be honest, the brand of this political party at the moment is under siege due to all of the different interpretations of what we stand for. And until somebody aligns them and says, no, this is what we stand for, and you're in or you're not in, until that gets settled through lots of conversations, this will continue for the foreseeable future.
And Rishi Sunak has kind of staked a lot of his credibility on this particular policy, hasn't he? He's made it one of his 5 pledges to stop the boats, and he's really trying to hold firm on it to get it through. His thought, presumably, is this is what matters to voters. It's certainly a very significant issue for Conservative voters in terms of their priorities when they're polled.
It's really interesting because he's trying to use emergency legislation to somehow get around the courts block, and yet polling nationwide shows that for ordinary voters, so ones who are not fanatically faithful to any one particular party, immigration, migration, asylum and refuge, number one, they all tend to get bundled up together and they're very different from each other. They're also not a huge priority on the part of the everyday voter. Everyday voters are concerned about the things we're all concerned about: infrastructure, hospitals, schooling, the cost of living crisis, increasing social immobility and increasing inequality. Robert Jenrick is really interesting because he's always been extremely verbal about this, but it's not the case, I believe, that he represents that kind of the great body of voters that we never hear from. The silent majority, I don't think, find this issue to be that important. It's quite interesting that Sunak, who rarely overtly states a political position, he's always seen as a technocrat and an economist, should come out and make this a sort of pillar of what he's going to stake his premiership on.
And Robert Jenrick also tackles, you say that those issues of asylum and legal migration are all very different, and he does separate the two, doesn't he, Robert Jenrick? He obviously talks about his objections to the Rwanda policy, where dealing with people coming in across the channel, but also he says the levels of legal migration are way too high. So the Home Secretary has been tackling this week with new changes, and he just says the country can't cope with the large numbers that are coming in.
Yes, well, one might say that, wouldn't they? I mean, if you have a mentality that says there's not enough to go around, this is an economy of scarcity, then of course you're going to say that. But then there's the other view, which is a rising tide lifts all boats. Ironically, interesting, given we're talking about boats. And in other words, if you grow the economy, then everybody wins. So why not focus on growing an economy so that everybody wins, so that this is less of an issue, and you're focused on productivity, you're focused on the way this country competes on in the global stage, you're focusing on exports to grow the economy as well. So if you're actually growing the economy, then this becomes less of an issue because there is enough to go around. And actually, let's not forget the benefit of diversity of thought from people from different parts of the world. All of the data shows that the more diverse thinking, the more diverse people, of course, as an American, I would say that, the more economically you grow. And companies do better with more diverse people around the table. So actually, not so sure this might be a red herring.
Okay, but there will be people watching that will say, but I'm worried about, school places, I'm worried about strain on the NHS, I'm worried about my job. There are people that do get very concerned if they think lots of people are coming into the country, aren't they?
Of course, but it's exactly what Alison says. This is not a zero-sum game. It's not that there's a fixed amount for everyone, and you need absolute investment in all of those pillars I was talking about before. People are worried precisely because of decades upon decades of underinvestment in all of the systems that we should be taking for granted in a good way. We should expect and have met our needs for great schooling and expert medics and physicians and hospitals that aren't crumbling and falling down. Same goes for school buildings, same goes for potholes in roads. And of course, people look to blame someone when things aren't working out. That is a perennial of human nature. Some political parties might take advantage of that and use that unhappiness to blame the other, the outsider, the person that you don't understand, the person who's away from you. And some political parties will interpret that malaise in a different way.
Okay, let's move on to other issues on the front pages. And Alison, I think you're going to take us to the Express next.
Yes.
And this is the suggestion that everyone's going away for Christmas. I'm not. I wish I was in some way.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, so one of the suggestions in this article is that increasingly people want experiences as gifts rather than more physical stuff. We all probably have enough stuff, but actually let's use the money to go away, have some sunshine, a swimming pool, change of scenery, and daylight. And so incredibly, it's suggesting that the next 3 weeks could be the busiest in years for the sector. So even though we are in a cost of living crisis, people have been saving in order to get away during this rather bleak, dark, cold, wet time. I can't say I blame them, actually.
No, it does sound rather appealing, doesn't it? Badisha, are you staying in London for Christmas, or are you jetting off?
I'm going to be here on Boxing Day.
Here in the studio?
I'm going to be here in the studio.
You are a trooper. Well, I can trump you. I'll be here on Christmas Day. So there you go.
Oh, really?
So,
okay. So we're both. Okay,
we'll both be here.
We
so
won't
not
be in the
jetting
Caribbean.
off.
We will not be in the Caribbean. We will indeed be here.
Exactly. It'll be great fun. Anyway, we didn't talk about Santa shortages, but you are back in the next hour. So we will bring Father Christmas in then. See you then. Thanks both for now.
Thank you.